One point is, if you use these batteries from China, if you look closely at the end of the connector here, you can see a little bit of metal sticking out. And I've had the problem that with this metal sticking out here, it can short on the inside of the connector in the lamp. So what I normally do is I cut out a piece of rubber to make an insulator. And then I take the small piece that comes out of that and put a center hole in it. So I center this under another punch that has a little different diameter, inside diameter. I'm going to poke a hole in it so that I make a little rubber insulating washer. I can take the middle out there, and then what I'll do is I'll lay this in the lamp and press it in with the connector, and then you can see it setting on the bottom there. So that's how you protect from a short circuit in your battery pack. So we're going to make the connector for our longer cable here. This is the raw cable. It doesn't come with the 9-volt connector. We're going to have to solder that on ourselves. And I prefer to use these higher quality 9-volt connectors that you can take apart. You can take a small screwdriver and remove the cover like that. And you can see here there's 2 terminals. They're crimped on, and what we need to do is remove those here. So I'll get under the wire and pry that out. And then with a pair of needle nose pliers, then what we're going to do is just going to rip the connector off. And then we can remove the wires. Now these connectors here are plated, so what we need to do is remove the plating a little bit with either a drill tip. We need to just roughen that up to get the plating off so that it solders okay. You can either use a drill tip or a little stone to get rid of the plating, to make the surface easier to solder, because if it still has the nickel plating on it, you won't be able to solder it. Get the debris off, and then you need a heat sink because this plastic melts really quickly. So either take an old 9-volt battery and use it for a heat sink. And what we want to do right now is pre-tin the battery clip so that it's easier. Be very careful with the heat because it can melt the plastic very quickly. So if you see the solder's not taken, then you know that the plating is still on the surface there. So you get it pre-tinned up, and don't leave the heat on very long. You can see here I already melted a little bit of the side. It's very sensitive to heat, so pre-tin and get some solder in there. And so now you have to pay attention of what's positive and what's negative, because if you use the charging systems, you need to make sure your polarity is always right. So this striped line here is the positive side. So you can cut the cable to any length you want. This cable comes in a 2-meter length. I'm just going to solder this one up, and then I'll take it apart later. But for the little bags here, normally 280 to 300 millimeter length is fine. I'm not going to cut this one right now. I'm just going to feed it through. There's a little slot here, and what you want to do is have the white towards you, the slot here, and this is the positive terminal. So you feed it through here, and you can bend the wire over and use something here to hold it down, and you can solder away. Be very careful with the heat because it can melt the terminal. And then you do the same thing for the other side. You can move the wire over, help hold it down on the solder pad there. And come in and get everything hot. And once you get the solder a little melted, then squish the wire down into the pad there. And so you can then test your connection. Let it cool off a little bit before you pull it off, so that in case the plastic melted a little bit, you don't pull the terminals off. I don't know if these batteries are charged. I'm going to show you a few tips here for the battery pack. And this thing is made out of just a plated cheap steel. So what happens a lot of times is that if the bag gets wet or the batteries get wet, then this thing starts to corrode. So what I want to do is provide a little corrosion protection with oil, and just here oil up the connectors with your fingers so that it's not so unprotected. A little bit of oil will go a long way to protecting steel components from corrosion. And I would also oil then the bottoms of the batteries. You might have to wiggle them around a little bit in the battery holder. So I'm just putting a light film of oil here on the batteries so that the connectors don't rust so easily. And then you can load up your battery pack with the batteries. What I'd also do is recommend getting a desiccant in a plastic bag or some saran wrap. This is a desiccant here, and packing this all together. Yeah. Another thing, the vibration can knock the batteries out of the pack here. So one thing you can do is take an old piece of inner tube and cut yourself 3 strips to act as rubber bands, and this will help hold the batteries as well as the cable. We're going to make this into the cable later, but I'll show you just how this works. And you take the piece of inner tube here, and you can stretch it over the batteries so that one, the cable stays on top, 2, the batteries stay in the battery holder and don't vibrate out. So once you use these rubber bands, you won't have any problems. Then you could take a normal water bottle like this. If you cut under the first rim here and go around in a circle, you have a 2-piece water bottle thing like this, and then you can put the battery pack, bring the cable through the top here, and this you press together and force the outside. You have to have a little smaller diameter here, and it'll snap together here once you get the thing worked in underneath. And there's your battery holder. If starts to come apart, you can put a tie wrap between here, but then you have a problem with your recharger. Then the best thing to do is use the cable with one of those multi-chargers I showed you at the beginning of the film to charge your battery pack. So that's how a battery pack works. I'll show you how to make the cable connection next.